Okay, so here I have set up two consoles. On the left, we have the Active Directory for hello.igoodworks.com, which will be our source Active Directory, and on the right window, we have an Active Directory for contoso.com, which will act as our hosting provider and the target system that the client wants to sync to. And since hello.igoodworks.com is a client of contoso.com, we have a list of customer domains here listing hello.igoodworks.com, the domain that we want to sync. We'll begin the installing Simply Server first on the target system. In real-life production, Simply Sync just needs to be installed on any member of the target domain, and our customer usually install it on the virtual machine or dedicated server. But in our demo here, we're gonna install it directly on our domain controller, which will work just fine. Click next, and next again, and install. Okay, so it's successfully installed. Now let's launch the program. Okay, so please open up pwsync Active Directory agent configuration, and as a first step, we're gonna choose a certificate. I already made an internal certificate called pw.contoso.com, so I'm going to use this. Click OK, and this will gonna update the facet endpoint here URL automatically. We have to select between enterprise and hosting mode. Choose hosting mode if you're running a multi-tenant environment. If it's a single domain, please select enterprise. For our purposes, we'll do a setup as a hosting environment with multi-client domains. Next, we have to create a security group for Simply Sync Server Authentication Group. This security group does not require any permission. This security group will have an account with Simply Sync client used to connect to Simply Sync server. And although it is not necessary, I'm going to create an organization unit for our security group. So let's go to the Active Directory and create organization unit. I'll say S group. And let's make a group call, I say PW security. Make your group scope global and group type security and press OK. Now your empty security group has been created. And let's go back to your program and choose the group that I just made it. And select. And click apply. Apply successfully. We still have to enter a license key. If you're running a trial, a demo license key is pre-installed, so you don't have to worry about it. But if you're running in a production environment, you need to enter a purchase license key in here. Here we enter our site license key and acknowledge that we must restart the system after you press OK. And since you're running in a hosting mode, you can also enter a key for a client side at here. but this step would not apply for enterprise mode. Okay. After putting all the keys and pressing OK and click apply, and it's gonna give you a sign apply successfully. Now let's head over to account management under tool to set up users to connect to SimplySync. Go to files, click new user. So what we are doing here is to create users on our Active Directory, but this is not going to be our end user, but it's going to be used to connect to the SimplySync server from the SimplySync client capture agent. So these are not Active Directory account users yet, but you are going to create it here. I'm going to say pw user and set your password. Display name is going to be the first and last name of this profile user. I'm going to say iGoodWorks Communications. OU for user means you can basically choose where this user is going to be stored. And I would like to store this user into this organizational unit, but it doesn't have to be here. You can put it in here, or wherever you want. And organizational unit for tenant means you're choosing the location where users are going to be synced. So click this one, and if you click users, then it means you are scoping out so that only the users will be synced from the client to this target. But I'm not going to limit myself on the users, but I like to have a global scope. If you want to have a global scope, please check this one and leave this one as a blank. Lastly, we have to put our attribute parameters. This is like a reference key of the database of the source side. And I want my reference key of the source side to be a male of the users. So I'm going to put the attribute parameter as a male and write something down on the notes. Create it successfully. Now let's go to the Active Directory domain services to check if the user has been created. And yes, when I refresh it, I see a new user has been created. Okay, before we move on to the client side, we have to change something on service accounts. So let's go to services, which I already have opened it, and go to pwsync fastest service and pwsync Active Directory agent services. Right click and click properties. And go to log on, and instead of logging on as a local system account, please log on with the account who got a special permission to reset passwords and change properties of users. And I have already created one called pwadmin. And click apply. Go to fastest service and do the same thing. If you do not log on with the user specially permitted to reset password or change user properties, if you do not log on with this account, then we cannot run the program since these services controls changing properties. And it must be manual to avoid the insecureness. Okay, great. And let's restart the server. Just letting you know, your fastest service might not restart, and it's going to be stopped right away after restarting. If that happens, go to the command. I have already done it, but I'll just show you just for the information. Go to the command and write netsh http add url and the port 8911, which is going to be the port that we are going to use, and pwsync facet / user equal whatever user is. In my case, it was this. And if you enter it, mine failed because there's already a file that was created. But you're going to be succeeded, and that will allow you for this user to be binded to this address so that you'll be able to run the fastest service. Okay, if both of them are running, your server configuration is finally over. Now let's go to the server side, but let's keep the server open in order to look at the information on the server side. Go to client and let's install the client. Next, I agree, next, next, next. Okay, since you finished installing the program, let's open up the program, which is called pwsync client configuration. And we need to put the input fields in here to synchronize with the server side. You can put all those fields manually, but I know the quicker and more convenient way, and I prefer this method, so I'm going to show you in this demo. But you can still put it manually if you want. Okay, let's go to the server side again. And go to the account management, which is here, and go to the user that we've just created, and then right click, okay. Looks familiar, right? So basically you can put those information and then we can export with the encrypted key and then send it here. And you don't have to worry about the server endpoint and server ID because it has been already made. Just put your server password of the user that you just created, and sync scope basically means you're scoping which users to be synced. And I just set here as a default, if the user attribute called user principal name exists, then it is inside the scope. Basically all the users. And source key attribute is gonna be the reference key of the client side. So I said the key attribute for the target side is also male, which means if the male on the client side and male on the source side matches, then it's going to synchronize. Write down the hosted name of the client. I say iGoodWorks.com. Just click apply. Apply successfully. Oh, by the way, if you want the control permission for the client agent, then you can click this one. So if you click server endpoint, server ID, and server password, then you're gonna block the client side to not to be able to control those three. Okay, and since I don't want the client to control those three, I'm gonna check those three. Just click apply. Export client command and paste it on the client side. Go to client tool and import target configuration and paste the encrypted key that you just got it from the server. Press OK. You're gonna say will you apply, and you click yes, and you'll see the changes. As you see, you cannot change those, and the only field you'll be able to write is gonna be sync scope, source key attribute, and hosted domain, but you're not gonna change this. Okay, now go to the user's OU, and this is a OU that you're going to choose so that you choose where to sync. I like to choose any users and groups inside the domain controller, so I'm gonna leave this empty and give a check mark here. And click apply. Apply successfully. And then you'll see the toggle button of inactive and active. Change it to active. Also, you have to register the license key here. Put down your license key. I'm going to put the trial key. Click OK. And apply again. Refresh, just making sure. Okay. Next, it's time to map our users to the user accounts on the target system. Just a little information regarding our users on our client AD. You have some users that will match. Go to Tool and click Manage Users on a target AD. Then hit Start. And the capture agent will connect to the server and retrieve the information from the target server which users are mapped. It's retrieving right now. Here it goes. So I have 6 users in my client side and 2 users are mapped, which is test 1 and test 3. Okay. By the way, if it was your fresh installation and configuration, you have to reboot the domain controller of the client side, otherwise password resetting won't work. So please reboot your domain controller, and I have already rebooted. And the last step that we have to do it is the testing. But before we test, we have to do the last configuration and server on the client side. Go to the server, tool, account management, and go to the user sync and click manage attributes. Then you'll see the attributes from the client side, and I like to sync everything from the client side. I'm going to shift it to the right hand. Click apply and then press exit. Now click import all attributes. Then you'll see that the attribute called call from the source is going to be synced with the attribute name called call on the target attribute, and so on. Click apply and go to the client side. I'm going to exit this and click default and click setup syncing attributes. And I'm going to click everything here and then select it. I'll click apply. Then now both client and server knows that my user properties are going to be synced. Okay, now let's go to the Active Directory domain service and try the testing. In order to do the testing, you have to open a program called Receiving Test Tool on the server side. And I'm going to change test1, which is mapped with the server side, target server side. Click properties, and I change the telephone number to 987-654-3210. And as you see on the target, telephone number is previous one. Now I'll change the password to something else. Password has been changed. And let's see if the receiving test tool responds. If it says successful, then it means our server has responded and the password change was successful. And yes, it was successful. So now I could see the password has been successfully changed. And now let's go to the properties to see if the telephone number has been changed. And as you see, it has been changed from 1 to 10 and 1 to 0 to 9 to 0. Fantastic! SimplySync is now up and operational between our two Active Directory systems.